Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show, Science Facts and Fallacies, episode 302. I'm Cameron English. That's Dr. Liza Dunn.
Hello.
So good to be with you. Thank you for joining us as always. We've got some really intriguing stories to discuss. Just a quick update. We had our most recent space today. They're every Friday, 11 a.m. Central Time on X. All you need is a Twitter account, X account. They're free. Our space is free. And then come talk with us about rebuilding trust in science. Today we talked all about the USAID controversy, how that's affecting scientific research and public trust in science. It was fiery, but still pleasant.
Rollicking discussion.
There you go. There you go. A rollicking discussion. We were floating through flowers of fields of daffodils, and it got a little aggressive at times, but still respectful. It was a good time. So come to the next one. We'd love to see you there. And in the meantime, Liza, let's jump into these stories because I know you got a plane to catch. So we want to move this along. So here we go.
Yes, that's good.
First up, Trump has sided with the cigarette industry in blocking a proposed FDA ban of menthol cigarettes. Here's why that could kill black people, excuse me. Next up, Africa needs to reject commercial agriculture and embrace small farms if it hopes to address food insecurity. And finally, here's why Trump's announced plan to stop U.S. contributions to the World Health Organization will kill people. Okay, so very shy, bashful people this week expressing their opinions in these stories. First article here. This is from a scientist named Jess Steyer, and she works in the field of tobacco control, which is a field that I have very passionate feelings about. But before we get into those, let's talk about the story. So over the last couple of years, the Biden administration floated the idea of banning menthol cigarettes. And the logic behind it, the rationale behind it is that menthol makes the harshness of cigarettes easier to stomach because it has a cooling sensation, right? If you've ever had any kind of like mentholated product. So the claim is people smoke menthol cigarettes and they continue smoking because it's more pleasant as a result of that. It heightens the experience. It makes addiction more likely. And because menthol are the most popular cigarette variety with black smokers, there's an equity component to this. And so in the name of public health, in the name of equity and social justice, we need to ban menthol cigarettes. So that's the thinking. And that's her argument, in essence, in the story. And she makes the claim that the Trump administration is siding with the tobacco industry in allowing these cigarettes to stay on the market. And if we were to ban menthol, there are projections that we would save 654,000 lives over the next 40 years, and almost a little over 250,000 would be black lives. So this has been sort of a passion project of the tobacco control movement for a long time. And there's some specific claims we can get into. But Liza, as both a physician and a former smoker, I'm very curious to get your thoughts here.
So I'm going to say that menthol smokers who are addicted to cigarettes, if menthol cigarettes go away, they're just going to switch over to other cigarettes. So you're not making a big impact. It's you want to try to do harm reduction methods for getting people to quit. I use nicotine gum. Other people, there's a huge movement against vape, but I think that it really is useful in helping people quit as well. And so I think that the notion that prohibition is going to help a certain demographic is actually a little bit paternalistic. I think that that's not necessarily going to be the case at all. If you're addicted to nicotine, you're addicted to nicotine, and you're just going to switch over. There's some interesting things too. You're at risk of actually developing several different side effects of a policy like this. So they banned menthol cigarettes in the EU, I want to say 2020. I might be wrong about that. And then people just did workarounds from that. First of all, there's a black market that flourished. So you can buy cigarettes on the black market that are menthol, high price and stuff like that, but they're still there. Secondly, you have a workaround where you can use unregulated methods of mentholating your own cigarettes. So people put in little filters and things like that. So they're going to bypass that. And then thirdly, you're making a demographic that is not necessarily not doing anything evil. Well, some people think smoking's evil, but if we're really going to, sort of go along the lines of feeling empathetic for people and empathetic for addicts, then we need to sort of not criminalize them, because this becomes an easy target for police to go interact with minorities. And I think that it's much easier to deal with, a criminal class that doesn't pose a risk to you than it is a criminal class that does. And so you're having interactions with people who are, dealing with black market cigarettes, that can lead to disparities in police treatment. So I think that Eric Garner's, for case in point, Eric Garner was selling loosies, which were loose cigarettes on the street, and he was, he had his interaction with the police because he was dealing black market cigarettes. And that set up an altercation in which he wound up dying, and all hell broke loose. So I just don't think that this is the most wise approach to managing addiction. I think that you manage addiction they're doing this with heroin, stuff to do harm reduction in terms of sensible harm reduction, not prohibition. That's my two points. Regardless of whether cigarettes cause lung cancer, regardless of whether or not they're menthol or regular cigarettes. And as a former smoker, I know how hard it is to quit. I had somebody call me on doing a survey once, and they wanted to know what brand of cigarettes I smoked. And I can't remember what it was, but I told them that, and they said, okay, how many different brands have you smoked? And I listed like tons and tons and tons and tons. So I just think it's really unrealistic to make the claim that banning this class of cigarettes is actually going to have an impact.
It is. It's not going to have an impact. And I want to point out a few things. Oh, hopefully we didn't freeze here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Cameras, whatever. Okay, we'll keep going. So here's the problem with this, and these are just a few specific points that I need to clarify for people to be aware of when it comes to menthol cigarette bans. As you said, the black market will supply menthol cigarettes because there's a huge demand for them. That's not going to go away. You don't kill demand by restricting supply. That doesn't mean you always have to allow people to have access to stuff that's bad. That's a different conversation. Nevertheless, there will be responses to this. So, for example, California already banned flavored tobacco. You just can't get it in California anymore. And the cigarette companies, ingenious as they are, they devised a synthetic cooling agent that is not menthol, and they put it in their cigarettes. So they don't call them, like Camel Crush is not called like a menthol alternative cigarette. It's just called like cool, or like wink wink, like it's menthol but it's not menthol, right? And of course the tobacco control people are losing their minds. And so now I don't know what they've done, if they're trying to address it. Like they're writing laws now to say no minty spicy agents, synthetic or natural, right? So there's always going to be that. The second thing is that, and this is well documented, the FDA's analysis about the effects of a menthol ban presupposed that hundreds of thousands of smokers switched to menthol vaping products or like menthol flavored nicotine pouches. Okay, so she doesn't mention that in the story, right? What the takeaway from her article or her Substack post is, if we ban these, lives will be saved. That's true, but only if those products are available, and most of them have been banned because of people like Jess Steyer, with due respect. All of the anti-smoking groups, almost to a T, are adamantly against any kind of low-risk nicotine product. But they don't tell you that, and it's really, really frustrating to me.
In the meantime, they legalize marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
I don't understand why we're having this conversation. You legalized a another drug that causes lung cancer, and because there was such a big black market for it, that and so it just doesn't. It makes zero sense.
Yeah, I was just checking the source for that.
The
But
other thing
go ahead.
The other thing that's kind of interesting is I wasn't quite sure exactly how the ban got rescinded. It sounded like it was a Trump executive order or it was a Trump-led thing, and that it was going to be the Trump's FDA that uh, did all this. It sounds like it was actually not a Trump executive order, and I don't know. I may have misread that, but that was when I initially read the article. I took it away as that Trump did something. I can't remember exactly how they put it, but that's how it came off. And this was the FDA making the decision themselves.
Yeah, it was proposed under the Biden administration, and it was really hard to pass because interestingly, there's a lot of like Al Sharpton, for example. There's a lot of black leaders, influencers, whatever you want to call them, who are against this. And they rightfully say, listen, we're grown adults and we can make decisions for ourselves. So stop your meddling. And as you said, right, this is going to increase interactions with the police. It could lead to violence. So
Mm-hmm.
go away. And,
Yep.
and that's the bottom line. I think that's the fundamental point. The other thing, and I looked this up, right? This is why it's helpful to do a little bit of your own research, to use a cliche. This is a 2020 review article. This is published in a major journal. It's called the Journal of Addictive Diseases. And this is a review of over 20 studies looking at whether menthol increases addiction rates among cigarette smokers. Here's the conclusion. You can read the paper. It's open access. The extensive body of evidence evaluated in this review reveals that the weight of evidence does not support that menthol in cigarettes increases dependence, regardless of the established measure tested, the population studied, the size of the sample, or the level of control for potential confounding variables. So in other
Mm.
words, if now you can disagree with that, you can say the authors are liars, you can say their methodology was wrong, but you cannot simply ignore it and just pretend like this menthol
That it doesn't
ban.
exist.
Right. So, you can have your hypothesis that menthol increases addiction rates, but if there are over 20 studies and there's conflicting results, then you don't get to just presuppose like this is religion, that you are here to save people. You have to grapple with the data. And this is, by the way, I write about vaping and nicotine products professionally. I use the products myself. I'm not unbiased, so you can fact check me. Nevertheless, you have to grapple with the evidence. And these people just act like, God told us to ban menthol for your own good.
That's right.
And no, thank
That's
you. I'm not.
paternalism, right?
Yes.
Paternalism.
Yeah, in all the worst ways, right? Now, the homeless guy down the street who's using heroin really close to where my kids play at the park, like he's fine. We're going to harm reduction for him. But,
Right.
for the pack-a-day smoker, no. Just
Yeah.
prohibition for him. It's absurd.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, go read that article. Very harsh. Of course, she's welcome on anyone from the tobacco control world, welcome on the podcast. They generally don't
And
like to talk.
but she's also a great science writer, and she's got some very good science too. So this is nothing against her; it's just the position that I disagree with.
Yeah, yeah, and I tend to be a little spicier than Liza, but yeah, it's okay to disagree. It's just frustrating to me that like the discussion is framed one way, and if you don't like that framing, well, then you're bad somehow. And
Right.
no. Okay, next story. Oh, what a great day this is. Okay, this is yeah, I can hear Liza licking her chops on this one. So, Africa needs to reject commercial agriculture and embrace small farms if it hopes to address food insecurity. This is by William Mosley. And I think this was an original to Genetic Literacy Project. Excuse me, this is
It
from The
was.
Conversation. And
Okay.
it was reprinted. I was about to say, whew, thank goodness.
Right.
Our mutual friend, colleague, Dr. Kevin Folta, has a joke about how it's always geographers who have this sort of soft spot. Like in the academic world, most people in agriculture don't promote this kind of stuff because they know from experience
That's
that,
right.
that regenerative farming doesn't feed enough people. It's just the bottom line. But these geographers, and they all write for The Conversation, and they all have these papers that they write about how trying to get modern farming technology into Africa is colonialism.
Hmm.
And I don't have any patience for this. Like, how many studies do you need to see that, better breeding techniques, better chemistries, fertilizers, mechanization, these things help people feed themselves and pull
And
themselves out of
liberate
poverty.
them from subsistence farming. There's this romantic idea that, subsistence farming is somehow happens in a bucolic sort of environment, and you've got a white picket fence and everybody's, hand picking strawberries or whatever, and that it's just a wonderful existence. uh no, subsistence farming is devastating for people and their families, and they Africa should, and I've said this multiple times, Africa should have access to the same tools that liberated the West from subsistence farming. We have 10,000 years of experience with organic farming, 50 years of food security in the West. Agriculture is not perfect, but what we've got is far, far, far less destructive to the environment and to food security than ordinary subsistence farmers do. And we've got the technology. It's like I'm probably dating myself. Do you remember that? You probably don't. This, in the 70s, there was a show called the $6 million Man, and then the Bionic Woman, and we've got the technology to fix this. So, yes, the Bionic Man had gotten into a terrible accident and lost limbs, and so he was given bionic limbs and could run very fast and he was a superhero kind of. But we for in agriculture have the technology to fix this, and people who work in agriculture who have the expertise to help these people lift themselves out of poverty and offer. Once again, this is paternalism. This is well-fed people whose kids aren't on the brink of starvation, making recommendations about things that they don't have experience with. And some of it's very well intended, but it's just not in line with reality, and it's not fair to withhold the technology that has liberated us. Period. People should have access to it, and then they should be able to make the choices that they want to make in terms of how they want to farm. With those choices, if they want to do regenerative agriculture, like one of the participants on our panel talks about, he's had great success with Western techniques doing regenerative agriculture. So and he can choose to do that. Mm-hmm. Other people decide that they want to do GMO technology, and I think that that's wonderful to be able to have those choices. But Africa and India and Southeast Asia, they should have access to the same technology so they can make those choices, and then individuals can decide how they want to feed their families.
Yeah, a couple substantive things. So I'm just not coming off as a jerk here. I can't stand this article or anyone who promotes this, because this kills people. People die because of this.
Yes.
A couple things. So colonialism historically is a very specific thing. Colonialism is not wealthy countries interacting economically with poorer countries. That's not what colonialism is, which is what we're talking about, right? When there's, mm-hmm. And as we've said a billion times at this point, if a farmer in Nigeria wants to buy seeds from a biotech company and pesticides or whatever, the word for that is trade. That's yes. A company and a customer doing business. Or in some cases, it's a company engaging in philanthropy, because like in the case of golden rice, the product is just given away.
Yeah.
And it cannot be sold for more than the market price of standard rice.
Will bear, yep.
So that's important, right? Colonialism is when one nation goes to another one and sends their population and colonizes it, okay? That is, in no case are we talking about this. Now, there are a lot of academics who go, well, we're it's derivative, and you know what I mean? Like, they're trying to say this is in effect colonialism because we're imposing on people. That's not what's happening. The only people imposing anything are these people.
Yes.
Right? These people that say that you need to use agroecology, and increasing food production is not the only way to food security. Like in this article, he said there's 6 different components to food security.
Yep.
Now that can be true, but like increasing production is the baseline, right?
That's right.
If a farmer's crop fails and there's no food, then there's no
food. There's no income.
Right.
There's no food for the family. It is the basis for your success.
Right. Just think about this. In the case of any developed country, the United States, the UK, the European Union, why did we get wealthy? Beginning in the 19th century, moving into the 20th century. Was it because there were geographers on the other side of the world who told us to use our ancient farming techniques that the Romans used, 2,000 years ago? No, it was industrialization, right? The division of labor, private property. That is what produces economic growth. It's not academics, being funded by federal grants, telling everyone else what to do. That's not what makes people wealthier.
The other thing in this article that was mind blowing to me is that they were talking about, they just touched on it, about the land program in South Africa. And when you collectivize farming or take successful farmers and throw them off the land and give it to people who don't know how to farm, you wind up causing starvation. And we've seen this over and over again. We saw this in Zimbabwe when Mugabe took over. And the idea is that you're trying to help the rest of the population have access to the same things that you do in terms of, but throwing successful farmers off the land actually leads to starvation. There are very productive farmers in South Africa, and I'm very concerned about their welfare because in the whole country's welfare, based on the policies that they're currently pursuing that redistributes this land from white farmers to black farmers. I think black farmers should have access to things too, but there needs to be a better way of doing this. It's because of the notion of colonialism that this is unfolding. And to be honest with you, I think it's very scary to watch because I think it's going to really undermine food security in one of the regions that is a breadbasket for the rest of the continent. I'm very concerned about it. And it's kind of talked about how the South African experience was going to turn out to be a good thing. And I think we've got precedent for it in Zimbabwe that shows otherwise.
Standing invitation, our buddy Jesper Muchungu, he's in Uganda, is that right?
He's in Kenya.
Kenya. Open internships, all free, right?
All free. Yep,
right?
Go try it.
Yep.
Geographers,
you can get your raw water out of a well, grow your crops agroecologically, sleep in a tent, commune with nature.
Yep.
It'll be wonderful. Just watch out because there are snakes, like really bad ones.
Like bad ones, very bad ones.
Not wussy snakes, as Liza likes to say. The ones that'll kill you.
Hand weeding. That's how you meet those snakes.
Oh, green paradise.
Yep.
Go for it. We'll stay here with our modern ag.
That's exactly right.
With your shovels and your organic fertilizer.
And then come back and tell us about it.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be so awesome. You won't want to come back and talk to us, right? So just go and,
That's right.
Yeah. We're being facetious. Technology is awesome. And I know this. Liza knows this too. We know people from Africa who say, give us these technologies. We want them. We'll use them illegally. Exactly right. There is a black market for biotech
There is
seeds.
a black market. There is a black market.
Hello.
Yep. That's right.
All right. Enough of that. Okay, final story. This is from our friend and colleague. This is Dr. Andrea Love. She is writing for GLP here. I think this is from GLP or from her blog. Excuse me, Immunologic.
Yep.
And as you may have seen in the news, the Trump administration came into office and started taking a golf club to very expensive China, bowl in a China shop. They are irritating a lot of people, freezing federal grants to all kinds of research projects and NGOs. And they also pulled the United States out of the World Health Organization. It's like a year-long process. There's lots of paperwork to do, surprise, for an international bureaucracy. The science community, as far as I can tell, Liza, is generally very opposed to this, and they're very angry with the administration for doing this. Dr. Love is among the people who take this perspective. And as the title says, she thinks this is going to kill people, and it's selfish on the part of the U.S. And I have to say, I'm a little bit conflicted on this because she's right. There's a lot. She gives a lot of examples of vaccination and nutrition programs that
Hmm.
keep young kids that they've committed no crime except they were born in a developing country. That was it.
Right.
And because of that, their risk for infectious disease is significantly higher.
Hmm.
Their risk for starvation significantly higher. And WHO, in her argument, does a lot to ameliorate those risks with
Exactly.
vaccination programs. Um, so, what do you think? Again, you've done lots of relief work in your career. So, what do you make of this?
Yeah, so again, I'm conflicted. I'd like just like I'm conflicted with USAID. I think that there are wonderful people who work at WHO. I know some of them, right? Who work at WHO, who work on relief missions, who do incredible work, who are very, very dedicated. And I hate to see them lose access to programs that have been terrific because of the U.S. cutting funding to the World Health Organization. That said, I also think the World Health Organization is also very politicized in a way that is not necessarily scientifically sound. So, for example, it is really going forward and trying to make regulatory policy around agriculture, which is I think beyond the bounds of the World Health Organization's responsibilities. And I've said this before: the World Health Organization is saying that there is an epidemic of chronic diseases. That epidemic of chronic diseases, they claim, is due to the way we grow and process our food. And so we have to have the whole great food transformation. And what they are romanticizing agroecology, they're romanticizing, pesticide-free farming. They think, and I've heard very powerful people at WHO make these kinds of statements. That would be like having a bunch of ag experts from the Food and Agricultural Organization go to the WHO and say that we should get rid of antihypertensive medicines because they have side effects. We don't like the side effects. We can't feel our hypertension. And in overdose, it's deadly. So we should ban all antihypertensives. Doctors would be like, you're out of your mind, right? You're going to have heart attacks and strokes and all of this stuff. These medicines are very well studied, very well regulated, very important for public health and for managing chronic disease. You don't go back to a manner of farming that has been there since the Middle Ages to fix these chronic health problems. You go find the reason why the chronic health problems are there. You do the research. You don't wind up studying the same chemical that's been on the market over and over and over and over again at taxpayer expense in order to uh, find nothing wrong with it and then still tell people that they should be banning it because it's making people sick. So there's the focus on ag, I think, is completely misguided at WHO. And I think that they need to have a much more robust discussion with scientists from the ag sector before they make these policy decisions. And so they are also politicized, and they need to stick to science and need to get away from the politicization. The Lancet is the academic journal for the WHO, and the WHO is in lockstep with a lot of the political opinions that are being promulgated by a medical journal, which it should not be doing that. And so I think that I can understand why people get very frustrated with this organization. You're mute.
Sorry. Um, I may change my mind on this, but I want to just play devil's advocate because I'm thinking about this in real time. I think there is a case for leaving the WHO, and there's a lot of cases. You brought a couple of examples that are really important. Um, During the pandemic, there was a Canadian biotech company called Medicago. They developed a COVID vaccine that was plant-based. So you grow the antigens for the vaccine in a plant, which is increasingly common for a lot of pharmaceuticals. It's really innovative. It's inexpensive. It does,
The plant's a factory. You don't
yeah,
have to build a factory. Yeah.
correct. Yeah, there's a lot of the back end infrastructure that you don't need. So if you need to distribute vaccines quickly to a lot of people, like in Africa, for example, this is awesome. Health Canada, which is like their version of the FDA, they
Mm-hmm.
reviewed this, they authorized it, and they didn't really need it in Canada because they had widespread vaccine coverage by the time that this was ready in 2022, I think. The World Health Organization refused to stock this vaccine because there was a tobacco company that invested in Medicago. They were like a small-time minority investor in the company, and whose policy, and this goes to something you were alluding to, is we can't partner with health-harming industries. So, in the name of this, pious, purist, anti-tobacco notion, the World Health Organization said we don't want any of your vaccine.
Which is just a shame.
And that is that's criminal, right? So and she in the article, right, her standard is they administer vaccines, they save lives. I don't know how many lives were affected by that. I don't know how many people got sick from COVID who could have been prevented from a real severe infection. But who said, sorry, it's our policy? Like when you call customer service and you're like, hey, can I have a refund? They're like, sorry, company policy. It's like, look,
Yeah.
change the policy. Your policy's stupid. Dr. David Zarek maintains a website called The Fire Break. He has a whole series on the WHO's war on industry. And he goes through and he talks about how the WHO is systematically trying to exclude pharmaceuticals, agriculture, medical devices, food and drink. Like every industry that has some connection to public health is being excluded from dialogue.
Is being tobacconized.
Right, right. They're trying to demonize the people that supply all of the technologies that she's rightfully praising in this blog post. Of course, IARC, which has created so much hell and has really spearheaded this crusade against glyphosate in the courts, is a sub-agency of the World Health Organization. Now, WHO itself has not made those same determinations, but they have done nothing to put IARC in its place. In 2018, Congress, the Science, Space, and Technology Committee of the House of Representatives, sent a letter to the head of IARC, who was Dr. Christopher Wild at the time. And they said, we are one of your biggest contributors, and we want to know where our money's going because we are hearing the most awful rumors about rigged operations with trial lawyers and activist groups. What's going on? He wrote back and he said in so many words, thank you for your support. It's none of your business what we do with the money.
Nanya.
So if this is going to go on, something needs to change. Now, Dr. Zarek makes the argument that if you stay in the organization, then you can wield some influence and change what they're doing. And I'm sympathetic to that. That might sway me. But failing being in the organization and making changes like that, I think the best thing to do is to pull the plug. And now, of course, the resources that we have, the expertise we have, that doesn't disappear, right? We can find new ways to distribute aid to countries that need it and to programs that need it. Same thing with the USAID thing. But I think she sort of implies that any criticism of WHO is misplaced, like it's just sort of a selfish, sort of a nationalistic kind of a sentiment.
I don't think so.
And that's I would not say that that's correct.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's important to be able to criticize agencies that get a whole lot of money. And it's also important to be able to audit those agencies and see where your money's going, because it's your taxpayer money. And they wield a lot of control. Once again, I would rather not see us leave the WHO. I think its overall mission is very good. I think it has a lot of wonderful programs, but I do agree that there are some significant issues. And, I think that this administration's really looking at that.
Yeah, we'll link to this. There's 5 articles by Dr. Zarek. Just as another example, there are a lot of industries when they were attacked by the environmental movement or, the anti-tobacco groups, they said, hey, let's dialogue. Let's figure out what's going on. Come sit at the table with us and let's compromise, right?
Yeah.
And the response of the NGOs was, this is our table now. Thank you for giving us information and in some cases funding. Now you are excluded.
And the Lancet has a whole article on the commercial determinants of health and is saying that industry should not be at the table at any policymaking decision, even though industry's got incredible experts that have a very solid science background. So this is a widespread sentiment, and I hang out in World Health Organization circles all the time, and this is a widely held sentiment among people from that area.
One other thing, and I said this during our space today in reference to the U.S. aid stuff. There are people here that need help, and I don't mean that selfishly. Mm-hmm. I don't mean that like I want to keep more money so I can buy more vinyl records, or I want to eat more red meat. Like there are people in my neighborhood, and my wife and I try to support through our church and through a food bank. Like we try to practice what we preach. There's a lot of people here. Like if you could take, I don't know, $2 million that goes to some program to promote transgender acceptance that WHO engages in. You could do a lot of good, right? There's a lot of drug addicts, a lot of homeless people who could be sheltered, who could receive treatment. There's a lot of people who can't pay their mortgages. There's a lot of people that can't afford groceries in your neighborhood, right?
That's right.
Not on the other side of the world, like people that need your help that you could do something about. And so it's not a matter of, let me keep my money because I'm selfish. It's a matter of these are my resources that are taken away from me by force without my permission. And that shouldn't be. Right? If we're going to spend this on public goods, let's make sure that there's people here that we can actually help and that we can see, instead of sending it to this far off bureaucracy that works against our interests in many cases. So again, I don't know, maybe someone will slap me in the face in the comments. And
I think it's perfectly okay to have that opinion. I think, and I think it's, other people have other opinions. I'm on the fence in this case. I see both sides because I've been on the ground and I see kind of some of the boots on the ground people who really do a good job.
Mm-hmm. Oh, final thing, and then we'll get out of here because I know you got to go. We had foreign aid, we had international cooperation before the UN, before the World Health Organization. Believe it or not, like we had airplanes and we could go to places and we could have conferences. Like you didn't necessarily need this resource-sucking monstrosity in Switzerland or France, wherever they are, and you know what I mean? Like you don't need this intermediary necessarily, right? We can do a lot of good without,
That's right.
Having people
without a bunch of bureaucrats.
Yeah, give us your money and shut up, right? That's hardly a sales pitch.
That's right. That's right. They may want to rethink their sales pitch. Yeah. I think that the public health domain has lost its power of persuasion. And I think that the backlash has been pretty significant. They've sort of been, we're gonna make the rules and they're gonna come from above, and you don't have anything to say about them, and we're smarter than you are, and so there. And I think that's how we got to the position where the country's leaving the World Health Organization, because our citizens, regardless of how academics feel about it or anything, our citizens, the majority of them, feel like they are wasting their money, and they don't feel like they've gotten any benefit from having it go in this direction. And that's unfortunate, because I do think there's been benefit, but that's the message that they're getting. So if we want to get back to the middle, and we want to have organizations like the WHO be part of a very robust public health system, then we need to hear what other people are saying about it, and the people who are paying for it say about it.
As I said last week, RFK Jr. is running HHS.
That's right. That's right. It is mind blowing.
It's working great, guys. Keep being condescending and smarmy and ignoring people's concerns, and it works out.
That's where it gets. That's what. Then you get Trofim Lysenko.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Treat the public like you're in an abusive relationship, and they have to tolerate whatever you do and say for their own good, because they love that. They respond, Mm-hmm. All right. Enough of that. We're gonna land the plane. Liza's got to split. Thank you for joining us as always. We're on Twitter. We're on X. It's at Dr. Liza MD, at KMJ English. Follow us. Come to our spaces. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
See you next week.